Yes. What is up, everybody? And welcome to another exciting installment of the U.S. Men's National Team Hour presented by the Qué Golazo podcast. And on this episode, we are going to talk about whether we are nervous ahead of this last transfer window. Last transfer window, what am I even talking about?
You're nervous. You're definitely nervous. You didn't say it right. It's an international break.
It's an international break. It's a window of consequence. That's what I'm trying to get to, Heath Pearce. Jimmy Conrad and Heath Pearce are here with you, and the U.S. Men's National Team Hour is going to begin right now. All right, everybody. How's it going? Your two favorite former U.S. Men's National Team players, Heath Pearce and Jimmy Conrad, are here with you. I'm all over the place because I'm already nervous, as Heath correctly pointed out, ahead of this window. Now, before we get started, though, we have to say this. Can you hit like? Can you hit subscribe? Can you leave us some comments as to how you're feeling about the U.S. Men's National Team, especially as it pertains to your emotion? All right. We want to know where you're at. Are you nervous right now? We didn't have a lot of players playing this particular weekend. We have a lot of players that are hurt. Mm-hmm. We're kind of stumbling into this international break, Heath Pearce. Where are you on the nervous, let's say,
scale, spectrum? What do you want me to
do? I almost did both. I almost gave it like a spectrum.
Yeah. I'm nervous. I'm nervous because, well, I mean, our Lord and Savior Christian Pulisic looks great right now. So
he does.
That's good. Knock on wood. He stays that way. But there's a number of things that we've been dealing with for a while now that haven't gotten better in terms of Gio Reyna not being more healthy. Obviously, Dortmund, I don't think played this last weekend. They didn't have a game, or it was postponed or whatever. It wasn't on the schedule. And so I was like, oh, that could have been a good week, but maybe it gives him another week of rest to get back in, and maybe he comes in. I'm worried about playing time for players right now, Timo Weah specifically. I'm happy about a couple of guys that we'll get into when we give our starting 11s if the game were today. But it's not my favorite of times because it's already tense. We're not qualified yet, and we don't have our best team to be able to put out there. But if there's one regulation I can give to all this, it's that Gregg Berhalter has played a number of players throughout this qualifying, drove us all crazy, made me blood red mad multiple times, said that he was on the chopping block more than once, were words that came out of my mouth. But now we have a more experienced national team. When it's less than our A squad or our best 11, it gives me a little bit of hope compared to, potentially what could have been a number of inexperienced players, or calling in like the old heads that haven't been in a couple of years.
No, I'm glad you brought up that angle, and I'm going to harken back to the Gold Cup, where it was quote unquote our B squad, right? It wasn't our Nations League squad who beat Mexico in a famous game 3-2 in Denver. You were there, Heath, so you know exactly what I'm talking about, and how it really just kind of ticked every single box of what it means to play in a big game in Concacaf. Well, we're walking into 3 big games in Concacaf in this international break, and 2 of them are 2 of the hardest, away to Mexico and away to Costa Rica. And I look back on the Gold Cup as people thought the expectations were lower. Oh, well, we don't have guys that we know. We don't trust. Like they're fringe players, camp cupcake players, whatever the crap, the fans want to say to describe these guys. And I actually thought what I loved about that squad in particular is even if they didn't play well, they still got a result. And we need that to continue in this window in particular, because I don't really care how we play. I just want us to get results. And so it's going to be tough because, and let's use Tyler Adams as an example. Tyler Adams is on yellow card trouble. And we talked about it after the Canada game. He went out hurt. And I wish that he would have gotten a yellow card in that Canada game, because if he had been hurt, we knew he was going to miss the Honduras game. He should have just said something bad to the referee about the referee's mom, pulled a Materazzi against Zidane, did something to generate a yellow so that his game missed would have been Honduras and we wouldn't have to worry about it. That would have been 4-dimensional chess he was playing. And obviously when he's hurt in a big game, you're not thinking about that. But it makes me nervous to potentially risk him against Mexico away from home when we really need him against Panama at home because if we beat Panama at home, we should be good.
It's actually not a bad shout, Jimmy, as you're saying that. And I didn't really think about this because I didn't really put an opponent into play of like building, which, by the way, for those of you who are, I'm not trying to bury the lead, we're going to give our starting 11s later on in the show of if the match was happening today. I didn't really have an opponent on the other end. It was just sort of like, what's the 11 I'm putting out that I think can get me a result? When I think about Tyler Adams and Kellen Acosta, I never want to see that again. I just don't think it's great together. I mean, in the worst of scenarios, okay, great. But if you have other options, let's go with other options that are more balanced. Maybe you give up a little to get a little. But when I think about Kellen Acosta in that game against Mexico, you start to actually have a specialist. Mexico's going to control probably the flow of play. We're going to go long periods without it. We're going to need like Christian Pulisic, and we're going to need to Brendan Aronson or Timo Weah to be able to scream up the field on counterattacks and create moments like that. But what is it that won us everything in the summer? Set pieces, right? And that could be the difference for Kellen Acosta, and which gives you the perfect excuse if you're Gregg Berhalter to say, you know what, Tyler Adams, you're a Panama guy. We need you no matter what, because we don't need any of this. We don't need you creeping around, an accidental loss of mentality or a mandatory one where you have to stop something from happening and it requires you to get a yellow card. I think that's actually a good shout, Jimmy. Well done. Thank you, man. You're good.
Thank you. Well, another well done is one to Nathan John, who wrote in the comments, I already hit the like button. So be like Nathan John, everybody, and hit that like button. It helps support the channel. We're close to 10,000 subscribers here on the Qué Golazo podcast, and it would mean a lot for us to hit that milestone. What were we going to say, Heath?
Hey, I don't have the data to prove this, but producer Des hasn't given out any candy lately, any free memberships to Paramount Plus, and that is the #1 driver. So maybe if we can get a few people to show a little momentum, we can get Des to go back to the powers that be, knock on their door, say, "Hey, boss, can I get a few more of those things?"
We want to take care of the people that take care of us.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's make that happen for sure. And the more engagement we get, the better. And also, Last Laugh Hap says, "I'm ready for a great show. Bring it on." Go UNC says, "Well, that's why you start Acosta against Mexico and you start Adams against Panama." And yeah, we agree potentially that might be the way to go. It's going to be really interesting because nothing would drive me more batshit crazy, I'm just going to say it, than Tyler Adams going down to Mexico and getting a yellow and missing the Panama game. I will be, you won't want to see me on camera if that ends up happening.
Oh yeah. And by the way, I call go Unk. I refuse to say go the other thing, because what if it's giving free ads to the university if that's what it is. I just assume it's someone's uncle and it's just go Unk on this. But yeah, I mean, look, I think that's a great point in terms of balancing this out. And not to say you ever go into a game assuming you're not going to win or whatever, because clearly Kellen Acosta can get us wins, but he brings a different type of play to the team. And he's much more suited for a game like that where, hey, if we can get Jordan Pefok, which I don't think we will, or we can get Josh Sargent, which I don't think we will, and end up with Ricardo Pepi, or maybe Timo Weah places the 9, or Pulisic, or whatever's going to end up happening as our number 9, to just draw fouls against Mexico.
Yes, that puts super important.
It's almost like getting the superpower out of Kellen Acosta is the most important thing in that game, which is, hey, we've got big bodies. We're very good in the air. You've got Robinson. You've got Walker Zimmerman. You've got just some big bodies. We don't have a Weston McKennie, who I think is arguably the best in the air for us, but we are good on set pieces if we're putting in the best balls. We just haven't been putting in good balls. And when we do, we tend to get something out of those. So I actually like playing to this idea of like getting the most out of our specialty on that field to get a result, and keeping Tyler Adams out of it.
No, I mean, if you look at our 4 goals that we scored over the summer against Mexico in the Nations League final and the Gold Cup final, all set pieces. Penalties, corner kicks, free kicks, all set pieces. And Mexico does have, I think, a bit of an inferiority complex when it comes to defending set pieces. It isn't always against us, but it feels like it's always against us, that they're just a little bit vulnerable. And on the flip side, I think we got these guys. We get a little bit of confidence when we get a set piece against Mexico because we've had so much success. So actually, it was pretty, at least for me, empowering in some capacity, or satisfying might be the better word, when we scored 2 goals in the run of play against Mexico in the World Cup qualifying in Cincinnati. That at least we can do that against them, which we hadn't shown prior to that in this little 3-game stretch. It's going to be hard to beat them 4 times in a row. I think that if we go out there and are organized and our team shape is good and puts ourselves in good positions to make it happen, and to your point about players kind of controlling the in-game management. If the game starts to get away from us a little bit, how do we can control the ball? Can we draw a foul to slow everything down? Can we draw a foul to maybe create a good opportunity for us going forward? That is going to be an incredible game in a lot of different reasons. And so much so, it's going to be such a good game that I wish I was playing in it. There's not a lot of times I think about it too much anymore, Heath, about wanting to play in a game. But that one for me just seems like we have everything to gain and nothing to lose. The Panama game is going to feel different. It's almost going to be the opposite. But in this Mexico game, because they're still a little bit on the precipice of like, how good can we be? Are we starting the right players? Tata Martino's under a lot of pressure. It's really, really, really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a difficult time. I just, what do we need? 4 points?
I think a win against Panama should do it.
I mean, but that's the second game. I mean, you kind of want to come out of the first game with something.
But if we don't, I mean, the only thing we need to do, and honestly, we've said it before, and we're going to continue to say it because it's true. If we can't beat Panama at home, then we probably don't deserve to go to a World Cup. I'll just throw that out there again. Now, okay, let's get into kind of the minutia of this and get a little more micro. We're talking a little macro at the moment. Let's talk goalkeepers because Zach Steffen is currently hurt. Matt Turner has got a foot injury apparently. He's out. So who's our best number 3? Is it our 17-year-old Slonina, the goalkeeper from Chicago Fire, who's an excellent goalkeeper and his future is incredibly bright? Are we going to trust him? Is it Horvath, who did play against Mexico in the Nations League final when Steffen got hurt and made a big penalty save to help us win the Nations League final? Is it Sean Johnson, who just won MLS Cup for NYCFC? He's been a part of a lot of these camps. He knows the deal. Who's your number 3 in this? Because we might be leaning on this number 3 in Mexico.
Hey, I will say this. Horvath hadn't played for a long time. You know who's playing right now? Ethan Horvath. Last few weeks, he's gotten some games. So I'm not against that because I know he's a gamer, but I don't know if you take that risk. Sean Johnson was one that I was like, I don't know if he's going to end up being the 3 because he's been in the national team window for a long time. He's never really stepped into the 2. He's sort of been passed by younger guys. But then you look at MLS Cup and you go, this guy was phenomenal and a phenomenal gamer going into MLS Cup. That was months ago now. And NYCFC are back into their season. I like him. But Gabriel Slonina is one where I don't remember who said it. I think it was their coach that was recently asked about, like, what if this guy's called in as your number 3? Like, what if he has to play? And I'm blanking on who said it, but they were basically like, well, this guy is definitely somebody that you could trust to put on the field in this moment or in this magnitude, even though he's a kid. So yeah, it's a huge thing for Horvath to get the games. Jackson's talking about Ethan Horvath playing over Samba today is huge. He's played the last, I think, 3, maybe not every single one, but I know in the last couple of weeks he's played 3 games. And obviously the championship plays games like every 90 minutes they start a new game. They play so many games in that league, but he's one that could be it. I don't know, man. What's your take on the goalkeeper situation? Is there somebody that you're like the clear number 3? I mean, naturally the clear number 3 becomes the 2 when the 2 goes out, and then that 2 becomes the 1 when the 1 goes out, right? Like it's sort of it's pretty clear. You wouldn't have a 3 in Sean Johnson all the way through. Slonina was the 4th goalkeeper they brought in the national team, but you wouldn't just have 3 and then just go like, well, we can't trust this guy. Let's put a field player.
Well, what I think I do appreciate about Sean Johnson is that when it became playoff time for NYCFC, the guy hit another gear and he was on it. I mean, he was engaged. He was ready to go. And I fully expect that that's the version of Sean Johnson we would get if he started. So no issue if Sean Johnson starts. I guess it comes down from a Gregg Berhalter perspective is which player Sean Johnson, Slonina, I don't think is ready yet. I think you can bring him and get him that experience, but I don't know if he's going to be a guy. He might be. I mean, 17. He might be Donnarumma for all I know. You know, I mean, he's just going to be the next generation, and we have to give him games to find out if he can actually be that guy. But I don't know if this window is the time to do it. Maybe in a friendly over the summer, I'd feel a little bit better about what he looks like.
Hold on, Jimmy, hold on.
What?
Are you wearing your own national team jersey right now?
Look at what happened, though. I am.
It got rolled up, huh? It bleeds. I that's happened to me too. Yeah, that's happened to me too. I mean, that happens to all the shirts if you keep them in a box or something, because that's happened to mine. But are you actually wearing one of your national team, like your own?
Look at my 2009 Gold Cup, dude.
Oh, that's sick. But like it's your own, right? Like,
well, I have all my. Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's mine.
You're not wearing somebody else, which would be a little bit more normal, I guess. This is not normal for somebody like yourself, but like it is a little bit odd that you're wearing your own jersey right now. But I like it. I just wanted to point it out. The number was hidden behind your microphone.
Listen, one of the things that that I tell my kids is nobody's going to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself. So I believe in myself, baby. I'm wearing my own jersey.
Yeah.
I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid.
Dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Jimmy, you're not getting the national team spot.
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to go for player coach here, Heath. All right.
Yeah,
so get off my back. Now, with regard to goalkeepers, Horvath, I just want to say that we relied on him in a pinch. And he came through for us in the Nations League final. Huge. And that was important to know that Gregg Berhalter could trust him in that moment to go out there, which is very difficult for a goalkeeper in particular to kind of catch up to the run of play and all of a sudden be at the same level everybody is at with that type of intensity level and that type of a magnitude of a game against Mexico, who we might need. And now, as Des correctly pointed out, he's only conceded 1 goal in the 3 games he's played so far. He got the big start today, and they're relying on him. Nottingham Forest isn't like down at the bottom of the championship. They're in 9th, and they're only, let's see, they're on 52 points, and top 6, Middlesbrough's at 55. And right above them, QPR 56, Blackburn 57. I mean, they could catch one of those teams. So now, finally, to have Forest trusting him in a meaningful way says a lot. And he could be rounding into form at the right time. And then now Gregg's going to actually have some options where it looked like maybe only Sean Johnson was the only legitimate option we could go with. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens here.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's an interesting one in terms of that competition. And Horvath, who oddly just sort of got replaced by Matt Turner in the Gold Cup, and then obviously wasn't playing, made a change of clubs from Brugge to Forest, and hasn't played up until now. But the timing of it certainly makes me more comfortable knowing that you've got a guy getting minutes. You know, when I think back to, by the way, Zach Steffen is injured a lot for a guy who doesn't play a lot of games. He's got some issues that I think physically that worry me a little bit. The upside is that he's obviously not a starter for me, and that's not an upside. It's an upside given the circumstances.
Right.
And so obviously I would love to see Matt Turner getting games. We'll see what happens to him. But maybe this is where Ethan Horvath is able to step up in this bind and get this run of games through this end of qualifying. Again, I don't want to write off Sean Johnson because I think he deserves it. And he deserves a shot. And the Gabriel Slonina, which is like how much experience is enough experience for a guy that's showing a crazy amount of maturity in just the amount of times he's played, as well as the clean sheets that he's getting as a teenage goalkeeper, starting on a team that isn't the best team in the league, but is figuring out how to become a leader. Yeah.
2 clean sheets in 2 games. They haven't scored any goals either, but that just puts more pressure on him to perform. So
exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah. Shout out to Gabriel Slonina. I just don't know if this is the window. I mean, I no problem trusting him moving forward, and maybe with that kind of youthful exuberance, he would have a big game. But I also think sometimes you take unnecessary risks. You're trying to prove yourself. I'd like to save that for a friendly. Now, there are some questions in the chat that are with regard to whether Mexico should even have fans at this game due to the fan violence that we unfortunately saw this past weekend between Querétaro and Atlas and Liga MX. Obviously, our thoughts are with the people that are hurt, the people that love the people that were hurt, and obviously from a frustration and anger standpoint, that there needs to be some repercussions for the lack of security, that this could even happen, that somebody needs to step up and take responsibility. And it seems like there's a lot of people saying, well, I'm not saying there's some fingers being pointed. Like everybody, it's hard to take responsibility when bad things happen, but we need somebody to be a leader and make that happen. So there's been some questions as to whether fans should be allowed at Estadio Azteca for this game. I don't know where you stand on that. I think that no crowd benefits us quite a bit. I think that Mexico doesn't play with the same type of enthusiasm. Now, I have been at a game at Azteca where the fans turn on the home team. They turn on the national team. And they turn on Club America when America's playing, they're not playing well. And that's tough for players as well. So it could go both ways depending on how we're performing as a team against them. What do you say about whether they should have fans there or not? And obviously a very heavy subject, but I wanted to get your 2 cents.
Yeah, so I was there for 2018 qualifying when Michael Bradley chipped the keeper.
I was there too.
And US-Mexico drew in that game, right? And we saw dude, there was fights everywhere around that stadium on my way out. It was kind of wild. But it was just Mexican fans fighting each other, everybody having like a wild of a ball. But it was a pretty wild experience. But certainly in the stadium, the tone changed and the fans started kind of whistling and booing their own players. But you got to get to that point before you get the advantage, right? And that's a hard place to get to that point and to get the advantage. Having said that, we're playing this in March, not in the middle of summer where it's hotter and more humid and more difficult to play in. Still a difficult place to play. It's not at full capacity still right now. So they're already losing a few of these things. With regard to sanctions or something like that, it's hard to just assume. It would be very bundling of everyone of Mexico, which is not the case of what took place, right? To punish the national team for
a club game.
I do think that there's still a lot that needs to be investigated and seen, and transparency that needs to be made around what took place there. But for the national team, if anything, it just needs you need to amplify security, double or triple the amount of security, and really go down there, especially for the U.S. team. Because if you're the U.S. national team, you're essentially a diplomat when you come into these countries, right? You come in under a little bit different rules, and that would be considered like national or international something. And so I know that the demand from the U.S. Soccer Federation is going to have to be, how do we ensure safety? Jimmy, you and I have been in places all over Central America, all over the world. Where,
how about Venezuela? We went down to Venezuela for the Copa America, and we had guys with M16s outside of our door every night. And then when you went down the hall, so you had like 10 guys in your hall by every door. And then when you get to the end of the hall, 4 more guys. When you get to the elevator, 4 more guys. Get down to the bottom of the lobby, 8 more guys.
Yeah.
Your bus is being followed and tracked by it was insane.
To put that into context,
I've never seen that many M16 guns in my life.
We had the bus, and then you had essentially SWAT teams in front and back, in like not tanks, but like your sort of semi type of tanks. And then you had multiple cars that were like 8 long to create your entourage. And then you had like 20 to 40 motorcycles that would basically go out in front of you and block off all the streets, so your bus never stopped. You just kept on going, right?
Yeah.
And then,
it's not safe to stop.
Yeah.
It's not safe to stop.
It's not safe to stop. And we've had times you roll up to a stadium and you're getting hit with all kinds of things, shaking the bus, and sometimes we play into the romanticism of it, but at times it is, and it can be very, very scary. And while that's a hostility thing and that's an intimidation thing, that's an edge, and that's a very gray area that it just takes that one thing where it turns the corner. And obviously, it had been mounting between Atlas and Querétaro fans for a while now. But if you're the U.S. Soccer Federation, you're certainly concerned for the safety of your players, of your team. And not to say that the national team fans are full of the people that were causing the trouble at Querétaro and Atlas, because most of the fans there weren't involved in that sort of stuff. But it is sort of a concern of saying, hey, what are going to be the measures that ensure safety, that we can focus and the game becomes the center of attention and that sort of thing. As we've seen, anytime there's escalation of events, just like the Venezuela thing, for example, Bush and Chavez were having a lot of tension. And therefore, when we went there was no huge risk, but there was an increased risk of what you would do. I stayed in Venezuela. I stayed in Caracas for a week after that, and I was just living a normal life. I wasn't at risk, but I could have found risk or trouble if I wanted to. There was an escalated risk, and so you take necessary precautions. I'm assuming that the U.S. Soccer Federation is going to request those, that the Mexican Federation is going to request those, and obviously, as Des Norris is saying, Liga MX is meeting tomorrow to discuss what measures to take to, one, to ensure this doesn't happen again, to make things right, to be more transparent. But with the upcoming national team game and the sort of interwoven nature of that, I certainly think something is going to, some measure is going to impact.
It have to be. You have to have some measure, some capacity. I'll also add in the World Cup in 2006, when we were in Hamburg, we had to drive to practice a different way every single day so that nobody could set up shop and get us on our route, which is insane. Even though we had the same type of coverage we had helicopters following us,
we had a helicopter in Venezuela as well. I forgot about that.
Yeah. The Germans were very trying to make it very clear that we were protected. If you walked into our hotel, you had, you had to go through whatever security, you know what I mean? To go make sure there's no metal. Any family had to come in. There's like a pretty excessive checklist of what had to happen. It was like Americans at that point were, and I think at times our team is a target, whether men or women, it doesn't matter, for people to try to get after us with response to whatever our government has done or hasn't done. And we're probably getting into waters that we can share for another time. But I just think that that's going to heighten the experience. And I think U.S. Soccer will obviously make sure that all the players are safe. I'm not really worried about that. And I think, to your point, I don't know if the national team should have to suffer for what happens at the club level, but interwoven is an excellent word to use there, because it is all combined, and we're all in this together, and it's just a shame that there's some fans out there that use sport as a vehicle to exercise violence on others, as opposed to actually going out there and supporting their team. So let's get back into the roster, though, because there's some big news that got announced with Weston McKennie. Not a big surprise per se, but still news nonetheless. He was just seen at LAFC game last night against the Portland Timbers on crutches. Juventus has come out and said he's out for the season. I think that's the right move. No reason to rush him back with a broken foot. If it's a muscle injury and you needed him for the last 2 weeks to go on to win the Scudetto or get top 4, and you thought it was worth the risk, that's something, right? but a broken foot is something much different entirely. Any big surprises with you on Weston McKennie? And then secondly, my next question is, can we replace him? Is there any like-for-like replacements in our team right now that can help us bring what he, or get close to what he brought?
I mean, Gio Reyna maybe in terms of production, but he's another one that we thought was for sure out for this window. There's been talk that he could be back for this window. If he does, it looks like it'll be just one game. It'll be one game. And we talked about the fact they didn't have a game last weekend, so you could have gone 15, 30, 40, or 15, 40, 60 if you could. And we just haven't been able to do that. So I don't think he would be able to fill in that type of role. I'm thinking about some of the older players too, in terms of somebody who can be a two-way midfielder, not necessarily a 10, but an 8. Thinking about Timo Weah. Could he play the 9 spot and then it gives you room on the wing? Could Timo Weah play on the wing and then you can pull Brennan Aronson inside, who plays a lot for Salzburg in that 10 spot, kind of underneath the strikers, or finding some of those pockets in the space. He's got the energy to go both ways in the way that we need him to. Times that I've seen him stuck in those areas, though, he hasn't been as effective as I would expect him to, or the way I've seen him at the club team level. Right. And so the answer is no. Like, you can't replace Weston McKennie. Having said that, we replaced Weston McKennie, and we can get results without Weston McKennie. And it's just that we were losing Weston McKennie at the peak of his form, right? If Weston McKennie was in a different level of form, I would say, yeah, for sure, there's some way to work around this, right? You've still got Kellen Acosta, you got Tyler Adams, you got Yunus Musa. Yunus Musa is playing very, very well right now.
But didn't start this weekend. Came off the bench.
Yunus Musa did?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he started this weekend and got subbed out.
Yunus Musa. Oh, he got subbed out in the 73rd minute. Apologies.
Yeah, jeez, man. You hit me into a panic attack. How nervous am I? Just a little bit more nervous than I was 10 seconds ago.
Well, Yunus Musa is already automatic lock for us. I shouldn't.
Yeah, he's a lock. But the fact that he's in form and he's getting games. There was times that we were getting Yunus Musa when he wasn't playing as much, and you still saw something from him. And him continuing to get games means he's only not just a form thing. He's just going to become a better player, and that's good for us in the long run. But when I think about De La Torre, when I think about Sebastian Lletget, when I think about, you know, I'm just sort of like grasping for anything here in terms of somebody that could either come from our wings to be in the central part of the field, or I don't know, man. I mean, I have the wildest dreams about Serginho Dest being a number 10 for us, but that's not ever going to happen.
Yeah, Derp comes in and says also, could Pulisic play a more central role to replace Wes? He could. Yeah, of course. Theoretically, yes.
Against Panama, yes. I worry about the transition side of that game. He does track. I mean, he's played wing back for Chelsea, and he's tracked back pretty deep at times. Chelsea forces you to have to go way back, especially when you're in a wing back position, the times that he's done that. So it's not that he can't track back, but the predictability of pressing as a team to win the ball, not that the national team's ever been really good at it. They've tried to press, but yeah, I just wonder about him being in that crucial position where teams can break the press off of one player that arrives late in terms of his effort defensively.
Yeah, it's a tough one. This Weston McKennie thing is going to hurt us. But as we've seen before, when players have been hurt or been suspended or out of form, there have been other players that have stepped up and have taken the most or made the most of their opportunities. Brendan Aronson jumps out with Gio and Christian out. You had Timo Weah really stepping up and being a vital cog for us. Really disappointed he didn't play this past weekend for Lille against Clermont Foot, who are one of the they just got promoted, so you'd like to see him get some minutes, especially when they're cruising. Didn't even get off the bench, so that bums me out a little bit, because I think he needs to be, or I'd like him to be as sharp as possible leading into these big games. I'm sure he wants the same. Busio didn't play this past weekend. Matthew Hoppe didn't play. De La Fuente didn't play. It's interesting. We had a lot of players.
De La Fuente, by the way, is one that they're saying there was some stories that came out where he's not professional. He's not training hard. He's not taking it serious, and that worries me, because I saw a few things about him that I was like, this guy could be really, really good. But it's disappointing. I mean, we are in that downside right now of having. It was a really exciting thing to have a bunch of young players, but now you're seeing the downsides of having young players is that sometimes they're not going to play, or they're going to have dips in forms or injuries and that sort of stuff. And we're experiencing that now.
Yeah, James Sands didn't play. Ricardo Pepi didn't play, which actually might be my biggest red flag. So
Carter Vickers keeps playing, though. Carter Vickers keeps playing, and they keep winning.
He does. Center back for Celtic. He hasn't been in the team in a long time, so I'd be pretty surprised at this point if we're going to lean on him.
John Anthony Brooks keeps playing, Jimmy.
He does. He announced that he's going to be leaving Wolfsburg at the end of the
season.
season.
Joe Scally played this weekend.
He did?
Yeah, he came back and he started. So that was kind of nice to see.
So let's say, is there any uncapped players then? If we're talking about, I know Cameron Carter-Vickers does have a cap or two, and probably a couple more than what I know. But is there any players out there that you think might be a surprise? Because Gregg Berhalter is announcing his roster on March 16th. Circle it on your calendars, everybody. That's 9 days from now.
I don't know what happened to Busio either. He wasn't. He didn't play and wasn't on the bench, if I remember correctly.
No, he wasn't.
Tanner Tessman came in that game. I'm trying to think of anybody that's in like.
I could see maybe Tessman. You know, I mean, he hasn't looked bad when he comes on, but
dude, he didn't even get the starts in the Olympic qualifying. And when he did come on, he was one of my favorite players of just that willingness to go forward and connect the lines. I really like him as a player, and he's got an incredible range of passing as well, which I think changing the point of attack at the international level is so crucial to creating space against teams that.
But is this the time? Is this the time though to try to bring somebody in? I mean, this is crucial moments. And do you just kind of lean on the people that you have already gone with at this point? Are you going to ride or die with that, or are you going to maybe trust somebody else? And De La Torre was good against Honduras. Is he maybe our guy that we start instead of Weston McKennie?
I mean, he was good, but it was a pretty crap team he was playing against, so it's hard to really know. But the international game, is not always as easy as it looks, even when you're rolling over teams. Actually, that's not true. There are a few times in the national team that we rolled over teams, and you go, "This is as easy as it looks." It is, but no, I mean, it's tough for me to say, man. And I'm just kind of thinking through. I mean, it'd be nice to see Jordan Pefok get trusted with the form that he's in right now. And if you could at least solve the 9, then maybe we can start to work around some of these other spots or move players around. If you were thinking about maybe Pulisic at the 9, or you're thinking about Pepe at the 9. Pepe didn't even come in the last game when Augsburg played, and didn't start, didn't come in, and another striker goal. So yeah, it's I don't know, man. I'm at a loss right now in terms of we kind of got what we got, and I don't think it's the right time to bring an uncapped player because there's nobody that's like blowing through things. There's obviously talks of Caden Cowell, Cade Clark. Caden Clark, Cade Cowell. Gosh, those names are shouts for being call-ups, and I think they're part of the future, just like De La Fuente. But it's just, is it the right time? Is a great question that you just asked.
Yeah, Eric Palmer-Brown's another one. He's in Ligue 1 with Troyes. He was just named man of the match in their away game this past weekend against Bordeaux. 24 years old. Obviously got signed by Man City for a reason from Sporting Kansas City. Now he's been bouncing around, kind of that loan move, very similar to Matt Miazga. You just like never go back to the home club, but you're always out there kind of floating. And, he's had conversations with Gregg Berhalter that I'm aware of, and didn't go to the Gold Cup, unfortunately. I think he missed a big opportunity there to maybe put his flag on the ground and maybe be the Miles Robinson here. Now, I know that really quickly, Michael D is asking if my kit is from the legendary Mexico goal game. No, this is after the fact. This is a 2009 Gold Cup.
It's from a legendary Mexico game, probably, but it's.
Well, I didn't play in that one. Thankfully.
That's right.
Only Heath did. Heath was part of the 5-0 loss in New York against Mexico in the final. I didn't help though, because I made those comments on that tweet about the coach kicking somebody, and that led to a nice firestorm, if you remember that. Yeah. But I mean, there's a lot to unpack with this team and who should start and win. And there was a good comment there that we play our best players against the best teams, and Tyler Adams should suit up against Mexico. I don't care if he gets a yellow. Acosta can do the business against Panama. I just want you to state for the record, though, you would not start Acosta and Adams together, no matter what, even in Mexico, where their tireless work rates could potentially help us.
Look, if you're Gregg, I'm not Gregg. I wouldn't want that because I don't like it. But if you're Gregg, you're like, I'm absolutely starting those guys together, because wherever they lack or are duplicative, I'm still going to make up in work rate, discipline, experience, all the things that I need. Plus, I've got the set pieces with him on the field, and I don't want Tyler Adams off on the sidelines. But I still think that Gregg has the perfect argument to be like, hey, we're resting you because we need all 3 points in this next one. Can't have you suspended for that. It's a huge risk. Or maybe it's like 45 to 60 and you make the change. But yeah, it's the perfect out for Gregg Berhalter in that one, because otherwise you got to start them together. When you look at what are the other options, you add Musa to that and you're like, it's still a really good midfield. And then otherwise you starting to pull back attacking-minded players into a game against Mexico, where do we need that, or do we need some discipline in the midfield to make sure that at a minimum we're up the spine and defensively we're strong, and then the attack will sort itself out if and when we get those opportunities with the attacking players that we have.
Yeah, wow. I'm a
coward. I'm a full-blown coward, Jimmy. Like, I don't know what to say, man.
I appreciate you.
I'm not Gregg. I'm making my own team. Gregg's going to make the team.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we are going to name who we think should be starting if the game was tomorrow against Mexico, or just, I don't know if it was really had an opponent in mind, but if we can put our best team together, given who's available and who's playing well, I'm curious to see what your starting 11 is as compared to mine. Duplicate, consisting of or existing in two corresponding or identical parts or examples.
Nice.
Way to go, Heath Pearce.
I used to say duplicitous, and that's not what it means. And then I found out as duplicative would be the whatever plural of duplicate.
The more you know.
Here goes the rainbow over the top of us, reading
with
rainbow.
Do you feel like then, because MLS is back in full swing, we might rely on a roster that has more MLS players than some people would prefer? I'm okay with whoever's in good form and whatever the best team we can put out there, but there are obviously going to be some haters out there that don't want any MLS players on this roster.
Yeah, there's going to be some haters. I mean, Robinson hasn't started the season great. He was actually sent off this weekend.
He did. He got 2 yellows and got sent out against Colorado. He took a bad angle on that play, too. That got a second yellow.
He hasn't been what I thought, and I think he's going through that. And we're going to see whether or not he kind of rounds the corner in terms of being young, up-and-coming player. And he's not that young, but like to being like, okay, national team standard. But we're going to get into our actual rosters, and I'll give you who my lineup is if you want.
All right, so let's go that then. So the premise is, everybody, if the U.S. men's national team was playing Mexico tomorrow, let's just say that, who would you line up? And Heath, you're going to go first. And while Heath is getting warmed up, I want to remind everybody to hit that like button, turn on your notifications, and hit subscribe. We're almost at 10,000 subscribers here on the Qué Golazo channel, YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate your support. It doesn't take much, just a little shift of your mouse and a little click, and then we're going to be best friends forever. And we really appreciate everything that you're doing for us, and we want to make sure that we reward you as well. We're going to try to have some gift cards for you in the future. This is us putting a lot of pressure on producer Dan to make that happen.
Poor guy, dude.
Give us your starting 11 for this.
All right. So here's my 11. So in goal, Gabriel Slonina, because I wasn't thinking about Mexico. Actually, why not against Mexico?
You're going to go 17-year-old against his first cap. You're going to put him at Azteca?
Hey,
wow.
You can be a hater, but
I'm just saying that is bold.
Bold.
I'm respecting the boldness of that shot.
Listen, I went out on a limb on Ricardo Pepi. Hasn't been working out for me lately. We still got time on him in terms of the quality that I think he's going to become. Went to the wrong club, called that out very early on. But Gabriel Slonina is one that just looks good. He doesn't look young. It's bold for sure. Then I've got Robinson at left back. I don't think there's a huge mystery there. Serginho Dest at right back. Hopefully you agree with me on those, Jimmy. But here's where I've taken a turn. Aaron Long is back. Aaron Long is starting. And Gregg Berhalter loves Aaron Long. And quite frankly, Aaron Long was one of my favorite center backs in the national team because he's extremely athletic. He covers a lot of ground and can put out fires. He's good in the air. Does all the things that like you were really great at as well, Jimmy. Just
thank you.
The fundamentals of the game of at the international speed and pace of the game is really, really important for center backs, right? Can you read the game fast enough? Can you make the plays? Can you think fast enough in split moments that aren't going to give up penalties, that are going to be able to put out fires? They're going to be able to do those things. Now, his passing range and all that stuff, I think, lack at the international level of what I would want from a center back, but you can't have everything. And going into these games, I want a guy that can play at that level. Okay.
Wait, just before you move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate the Aaron Long shout. He just scored this weekend against Toronto FC, so he's looking.
Everybody
like
did, though.
Fine. That's true. Everybody, everybody. Bob Bradley's being nice to everybody right now. What I want to say to everybody watching is, would you make any changes to Heath's lineup while he's discussing it? Let us know in the comments right now. Go ahead, Heath.
Oh, man, I'm going to get crusched for Slonina.
Of course you
are. Come on. Listen, if you care about the future of U.S. soccer, let this guy get some experience. Also, let me have this moment, like, don't
get ahead of it. Just own it. Keep going.
Hey, guess what? We're not actually playing tomorrow, guys. We're not actually playing. So I'm not under the gun, okay? Tyler Adams and Yunus Musa, again, wasn't thinking about Tyler Adams' suspension. I think I would probably change that. If this was lining up for the Mexico game, I would have that be Kellen Acosta for sure. And then Brendan Aronson as my 10. Again, I think he's very capable of being, and it's not necessarily a 10. He's a two-way player. He's got the energy. It's also one of those things when you release your front three to press, sometimes it requires that highest midfielder to be the one that sort of takes that next passing lane. And in the system that he plays, he knows exactly that when a trigger happens, it allows you to sort of, the game becomes predictable. You're sort of baiting that pass. You win the ball higher up the field. You're closer to scoring goals. And I like him in that spot. He hasn't been impressive in the one game that he played in that spot. I don't remember who it was against, but it wasn't good. But I'd give him another shot at that. So what do you think? What's everyone think about that midfield three? Obviously, like I said, if this was Mexico, I'm taking Tyler Adams out, saving him for Panama. He becomes my guy for Panama. And I keep Kellen Acosta in because of yellow card worries. And then up top, Christian Pulisic, Jordan Pefok, and Timothy Weah. Again, in order for me to get Brendan Aronson there, I had to sacrifice him on the wing. and put Timo Weah in, who's not getting the minutes that I would like right now, but he seems like he's got this confidence in the national team that I think will last. And by the way, Derperp says Brooks over Long for sure. Brooks was a monster in the Nations League final, and I thought about this long and hard. I mean, Tim Reams also got Fulham at the top of the championship right now, plays every single game, is fantastic as well. But both of them, my biggest worry is that international speed. Like, can you explode at the right times to be able to recover or make the play that you need to? And both of them at times I go, oh, might be a step off. Both really good with the ball. Both are best passers in the national team for sure. But when it comes to the things that I need them to do well for the next 3 games, or at least one game to get 3 points, I'm going with Aaron Long, who's going to be a little bit more no nonsense and not try any silly business. And then Jordan Pefok up top was a little bit of not a hot take, but certainly a hot take in the context of like the fact that he's been good for a couple windows now and hasn't gotten a shot.
No, I like the Jordan Pefok. I didn't actually have him in mind. Just to pick apart yours before Des moves it over to mine. I see that Kai says Aronson is bad for us whenever he plays in midfield. No, I mean,
yeah, it was like once or twice.
We saw De La Torre actually in with Musa and Aronson if Tyler Adams doesn't play against Mexico.
He was good against Honduras. It just Honduras to me was like,
yeah.
You could have landed a plane in between the lines against Honduras.
I guess when we end up seeing my starting 11, I was kind of thinking what I would do and also what Greg would do. And that's why I didn't have Jordan Pefok in my 11, because there's just something about Pefok's game that I don't think Greg particularly likes. Now, I think that Pefok could be one of your first players off the bench. He scored against Honduras in the Nations League semifinal, coming off as the bench. And that's where I like Pefok, is he gets on the end of crosses. He makes good hard runs to the spaces he was trying to get to. And if there's some urgency in a game and we're just trying to dump balls into the box, I'd rather have Pefok up there than our little tiny guys that are trying to win headers. No,
Valentina saying Luka for Aronson. That's the only change. So I like Valentina's. I'll ride for Valentina.
Yeah, I could see that as well. I think De La Torre does. I think when he picks up the ball, he allows the Pulisics and the Aronsons and the Weahs to stay a little bit higher, because he can be that, as you like to say, Heath, that connective tissue that allows the team to transition. Because sometimes, and we've seen it before against Mexico, because Mexico does a pretty good job against Pulisic, all things considered, outside of the time he came on as a super sub. But when he starts a game, I remember the Nations League final where he kept picking up the ball 10, 15 yards deeper than I thought he should have, because he wants to touch it. He wants to be involved. He wants to have an influence on the game. And he does a very good job on the half turn, Pulisic, that is, of then drawing fouls. But can we get him a little higher up the field? And I don't think, to what Valentina's saying, I don't think that Aronson would be able to do that, because the way he looks and gets the ball and what he's trying to do is a little bit different. Whereas I think De La Torre would probably get it and try to maintain possession and get those guys in good spots.
Do you have De La Torre? I hope you have De La Torre in your team, because there's a lot of shouts in the comments right now for De La Torre. People are really Jimmy did not go with De La Torre. Wow, after big upping him too from the comments.
No.
All short.
So I thought strictly about getting a draw in Mexico. Okay. And even though I think De La Torre would be a great shout, and I'm happy to have that conversation, I think Acosta and Tyler Adams would be where I think you go to just make sure you secure the result. This feels kind of empty bucket Bob Bradley stuff, and where you really have that empty bucket in midfield.
I like your consistency of your back line, though. I really do appreciate the idea of just going with what we've had and what has significantly worked.
And I have Horvath in goal, and the reason is because he's playing now. He's proven that he can step up for us against Mexico in a big game, and I gave him the slight edge over Sean Johnson. If Horvath hadn't been playing,
we've screwed Sean Johnson. By the way,
have
both of us saying he should play and he's in great form. We've actually screwed him out of this.
We did, and I if he calls me,
we both played with him. I had some games with him in the national team, so there's a little bias that I don't have with others.
I'll say this: if Horvath wasn't playing right now, then it'd be such an easy pick for Sean Johnson. I would have no issue with that. Miles Robinson, you're right, hasn't started particularly well for Atlanta United. Got a red card this past weekend, 2 yellows. The second one was really late in the game, but I didn't like his angle in terms of how he tried to close down the space. But ultimately, I like his partnership with Zimmerman. Chris Richards didn't play this past weekend for Hoffenheim, and I think he had a bit of a knock, but still didn't play, and the team won away from home.
I think he's still hurt. I think his foot's still broken.
Yeah, I think he's still got a little something. He was doubtful. I guess there was a possibility that he could play, but who knows what they're doing there. But Acosta and Adams for me just felt, if you can just, if as long as to your duplicative, but as long as they don't duplicate the same type of stuff. Now, Tyler Adams, asking him to kind of keep it in a highly emotionally charged game against our biggest rivals away from home, to keep it together and not get emotional is asking a lot, I think. So maybe you could take him out, bring Acosta down into the Tyler Adams spot, save Adams for Panama, and then you bring in De La Torre. Because if you had Musa, De La Torre, and Acosta, I'd be totally cool with that as well. Serginho Dest didn't start this past weekend, but obviously he's earned a new fan in Xavi over the last couple of weeks. Happy about that. I went with Timo Weah up top, though, because he can play the part, and I think there's something about interchanging that could cause some problems for the opponents. Pulisic's obviously in. Aronson I really like. And then Timo Weah, I just think there's a comfort level that he's had with the national team where I think he feels more supported when he comes with this national team than he does with his club. And because of that, I think he gives that little extra that only comes from that loyalty that you get from a coach and from your teammates. And I want to see him continue to get roll out. I don't think Pepe's in a good place. He's not playing, didn't play this past weekend. And I just think that's part of being a young player, right? There's a lot of ups and downs and expectations and reality and all that good stuff that gets mixed in. Pfalk, I think, could still come off the bench if we needed something late. And I think there's value for him. I just don't think Gregg wants to start him. So I didn't even really consider him as a starter, but definitely open to anybody wanting to pick apart my lineup there, Heath Pearce.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy, for a guy who lives on the edge, that wasn't a very life on the edge lineup for you. You know, I thought that you would go a little more edgy, kind of like a little more subliminal messaging. You actually went for the win and connected to the last sort of however many games they've played in qualifying before. And I respect that, by the way. And I like the Timo Weah one. We talked about that before. Him up top, his little darting runs, his diagonals, and he can drift out wide occasionally to run one-on-one. And he's also good at just when you need to lump the ball, that run in, that ball over the top, and the way that Canada has that sort of verticality of not even necessarily a style of play, but sometimes you lump it. You just want to be able to press a team back, push your lines up, and have somebody that can chase it and occasionally get on the end of it. So yeah, I like that. It's a good roster, man.
Appreciate that.
Not what I would do, but you know.
Here we go. All right, everybody. That is the end of the U.S. Men's National Team Hour. We want to apologize for it not being a full hour. Heath has something really important, which I don't know what's more important than hanging out with us, talking about the U.S. Men's National Team. But guess what? Because we're cutting this one short, we'll add on 10 extra minutes next week. And we also have some big news starting next week as well around the U.S. Men's National Team Hour. I think you're going to be pretty thrilled about the news that's coming your way. That's me doing a big, giant tease. But make sure you hit like and subscribe. Turn on your notifications if you haven't already. Make sure you subscribe to the Qué Golazo podcast in particular so you keep getting the good stuff. And on behalf of Heath Pearce, our producer Des Norris, I'm Jimmy Conrad, and I'm saying we'll see you next time. Later.